Guys, we are here at San Diego Comic-Con 2023. I'm here with Travis Beacham for Impact winner, Audible's Impact winner. First thing first, you got in yesterday. How are you enjoying San Diego?
It's wild. It's been a while since I've been because of the pandemic and all. It's just the atmosphere is so charged, like this sort of Halloween vibe. I love it. It's addictive.
I know, it's the one place where you'll go to breakfast and you'll see like Darth Vader eating with a Ninja Turtle, and it's completely normal.
Yeah.
But we're here to talk about Impact winner. You're in season 2 now.
Yep.
I got to ask you, what inspired the story of Impact winner, and how did you approach this as an audio drama?
Oh wow, it's hard to say like what exactly inspired it, but I think I don't know what came first, if it was the comet or the vampires, but there's something like it's a very short jump from in my head, or my imagination at least, to having a world without sun, to oh well, maybe vampires would like that, like and come out and try to rule things. I think what I liked about it initially, what really made it like catch fire in my imagination was this this feeling that I love the mixing of this fantasy elements and sci-fi elements.
Sure.
Because I feel like in a lot of, especially modern vampire things, you see them as like this disease or this mutation, which is cool. But what I really liked was like Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Right.
Like the Coppola one where he's like, it's kind of unclear what the scope of his powers are. Like it's sort of like, he's a wolf. He's a bat person. He's a fog slipping through the cracks under the door. That kind of thing, like where vampires were this explicitly magical, like godlike thing. And I love the idea of like mixing that with this very sci-fi post-apocalyptic setting. Like you hear common impact, an impact winner, and your head goes to sci-fi place.
Sure.
So I like mixing that with like bringing sort of the occult and the supernatural and sort of mixing those two ideas in this.
And that's the perfect blend for San Diego Comic-Con. I feel like you mix the horror with the sci-fi.
Yeah.
Here we are. Now, you talked about this a little bit. What separates the vampires in Impact winner from other vampires we may have seen in the past?
Yeah, well, I wanted them, to have sort of like this, like I say, this kind of folkloric kind of gravitas,
Sure.
this like magic to them. And not to say that we don't get the other kinds as well. Like we get the kind of ravening hordes, because it's like part of what separates these vampires from other vampire sorts of things is, and other things have done it. But we have this caste system. So in the lowest caste, you have kind of the very feral, sort of animalistic, sort of slobbering,
Sure.
zombie-like vampires, and going up, you have the ones that look like humans in the middle, that look like humans and can pass for humans, and then at the top are your like Bram Stoker's Dracula ones, like they can do anything, they have all these weird powers, they can shapeshift, and I like the idea because in folklore a lot, when you read about like old vampire stories, they really tend to conflate the idea of like vampires and werewolves and witches, and they're all kind of treated as the same thing.
Right.
So so I really tried in this to kind of codify that into the mythology and have these, shape-shifting and vampirism and magic all sort of be intertwined.
I love the fact that you like really deep dove into the like history of vampires. Now, when you were doing your research on vampires, was there anything that stood out to you that you wanted to stay away from, or anything that you wanted to dive into more?
I don't know that there was anything I really wanted to stay away from. I did kind of want to keep a bit of a distance and had to sort of stop myself from explaining them too much.
Right.
Because I think, I do come at things from, I think, more of a sci-fi sort of mindset. And I think turning that off and letting things be mysterious and like letting things like, oh, I don't want to explain this too much. I don't want to make them too biological.
Right.
Like I don't want to like, but just getting enough to like, to keep them mysterious. I mean, I do still add things like when you change into a vampire, you kind of, you become a cocoon, like your skin hardens and inside you liquefy and like reform as sometimes a younger version of yourself, but without scars, without any kind of whatever, and you hatch in this like immaculate sort of entity. But like that idea of like, I don't know, I just thought that was fun, like adding that kind of like Ridley Scott alien sort of body horror thing.
Sure.
Like a cocoon yielding this magical vampire creature.
Now, I'm from LA, and it's like 2-hour drive down to San Diego.
Yeah.
One thing I absolutely love doing is listening to like an audio drama as I'm driving down. I feel like that's the best way to kind of clear my mind and get, immersed into a story while I'm sitting in terrible traffic in Los Angeles. So can you talk to me about how your experience with film and television kind of helped influence the audio style that we have in Impact Winter?
Yeah. Well, it's what I really, really wanted with Impact Winter, and I feel like you rarely hear this with audio dramas, is I wanted this kind of messiness. I feel like you hear a lot of like audio series nowadays, and what you hear is kind of this very clean quality, all the voices very discreetly, isolated, and I wanted Impact Winter to sound. I wanted it to sound like a movie that you just happen not to be looking at.
Right.
Like that you were looking away. So filled with, whereas in another series you might have very purposeful sounds like a door creaking or footsteps or a phone ringing. All those are very isolated and very identifiable. I wanted Impact Winter to be bristling with sounds, some of which you could identify, some of which you couldn't, but that all felt like part of the sound design of a film. And in doing that, we got a film sound team. They don't usually do like radio stuff or audio stuff. They usually do sound design for movies and TV shows.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so that was part of what separated the feel of it from others.
That's incredible. That is so cool. Now, talk to me about where we left off in season 1 and how we see some of these characters evolve in season 2.
Season 1, yes. So season 1 ends at a place where I think Darcy sort of, was, of course, begins season 1 as this sort of vampire hunter / defender of this survivor community who ends up being turned herself.
Right.
And I think spends a lot of season 1 grappling with what that means and what kind of vampire, what kind of person she's going to be now that she's a vampire, and ends up in this place where she discovers that being the last or most recent anointed one, the first one of this winter period, has given her this sort of prophetic import. Like she's this prophesied character who's foretold to end the winter and kill the queen. And she is really all about that. I think once she hears that, she's like, yes, finally a purpose that I understand, something that like intersects with my life before. Like I can be a crusader, I can be a defender of humanity, a defender of the world. And so she's gone off to begin her training. If it was Star Wars, it would be like she's going to Dagobah to meet Yoda, basically, and so that's where she's going off to, and she's ultimately going to discover in season 2 that all of that is a bit more complicated than she initially thought.
Right.
And she's not quite out of the woods just yet. And meanwhile, her sister, who had before season 1, her younger sister, who was quite the opposite of Darcy and had spent most of her life since the age of 9 in this bunker, so had grown up, become a teenager in this bunker, never seeing the sky, never being around more than, however many hundred people were there, has now had to step in to fill in her sister's shoes as a defender of that community.
It's incredible.
And so in season 2, we'll get to see her stepping into those shoes and seeing how she handles it differently from her sister.
Now, what character dynamics were you most excited to play with in season 2?
Season 2, I loved. I wanted to bring in new characters, as well. I wanted to sort of populate it with new characters because I figure you've always got people coming into this bunker, and what's the fun in having Darcy go off into this world without meeting new people in this world, like her maker's maker and that kind of thing. But also there was there's the character Penelope, who I love, who spent most of the first season as this prisoner in this castle, who was sort of interrogated and poked and prodded, and has now sort of been accepted as part of the community and is actually filling in for Liam Cunningham's character Jepson, who was killed at the end of the first season. Now it's a vampire who's become the head of security at the castle, that they've all sort of grown to accept and trust.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, what were you most excited to explore in season 2 that you didn't really have the time to really explore in season 1?
I think probably the size of the world. Season 1 was very isolated to just this corner of England, the southwest corner of England, which is like a location that I really love. It's got those moors, in the fog. It's like Hound of the Baskervilles or whatever, all that stuff, or a Daphne du Maurier story. And a setting that I really, really love. But this is again is a thing that's happened across the world. The impact winter is impacting the entire globe, and I think the fun of season 2 is that we get to expand that, and we get to leave this nest that we spent so much time in season 1. We get to go up north and find what the vampire resistance is doing. We get to go down south and find into the hub of vampire politics, where the ruling class is and all their machinations. So it's having a lot of fun with that, and just seeing the bigness, the scope of the world.
You know, it's talking about the world building for a second. Now, I know you guys did a prequel comic to kind of expand this world. It's set years before the events of the show, or the events of the show. Can you talk to me about how you guys decided to expand the world through that medium?
Yeah, so it was always part of it. I think, part of the fun in working with Skybound is they have a very like wide angle lens, and so when you're telling a story, it's like, what mediums can this story exist in? And so immediately, we're talking about not only the audio series, but the comic books, and always talking about a video game, which I can't wait to play. I pictured it would be kind of like, early on you pick human or vampire and you see how it turns out.
Oh, that's amazing.
I would love to play something like that. But in terms of comics, it was like, and it's something that I like to do. It's something I did in Pacific Rim as well, like coming in late to a story. Like Pacific Rim is, I can't even remember, like 10 years or something after the kaiju come. And when we come into Impact Winter, it's like 7 years after the impact. And part of the fun in that is I like the lateness of coming into a story like that, but it also gives you all this sort of prehistory that you then get to go back and fill in.
That's amazing.
And with comic books and whatnot. And so our first prequel comics was set a few years before the series begins, still after the winter, but a few years before the series begins. And this latest one that come out, we get to go all the way back. It tells the story of one of the main characters who's a vampire, and it goes all the way back to Roman Britain. So like way, way back. And I just thought that was a fun sort of turn to take, and an unexpected turn in a post-apocalypse to like veer left and be like, let's go way back into history.
That's
and
incredible.
See something super old.
Now, now we have things being expanded in all forms of media, and you talked about expanding this world through a video game. Is there anywhere else? I mean, we have comics, audio dramas. Anywhere else you'd like to see Impact Winter expanded?
I would love to see a TV series, honestly.
Yeah.
I think when I first had the idea, I sort of pictured it as a TV series, and it just came together as an audio series in a funny way. So I would definitely love to see that. I would love to see the video game. I would love to see more comics. Yeah, I think just anywhere where a story can be told. I would love to see some version of it.
Now, audio dramas are a different animal than film, television, video games. Can you talk to me about what you learned from that you can now apply to other forms of the medium?
Yes. So what I love about audio dramas is I do a lot of like genre writing for screen, and always there's this thing that you have to do in genre writing where you have action scenes, and I'm not a big fan of writing action scenes. I love watching them, but they're sort of tedious to write. Okay. Because you're just like, I'm going to write this, and then the stunt coordinator is just going to come in, and the director's going to come in, and they're going to do their own thing anyway. So a lot of times I wish I could just write they fight, and whatever. But
they fight.
but the thing about like telling stories in audio drama is those scenes really don't work. Action does not work in audio because you can't. It just sounds like mush, like pound, pound, and you don't know who's hitting who or whatever. So you have to learn to create tension and learn to really drive scenes with dialogue.
Oh, wow.
Which I found to be extremely fun. Like, you can't lean on action scenes and you can't lean on chase scenes. Like, you have to figure out sort of new ways to create tension just using dialogue, just using sound effects.
Did you know that was going to be the challenge going in, or is that something you discovered as you were doing the project?
It's something I discovered as I was doing the project. I think going in, I knew it was going to be a little bit of a challenge, and I think part of what drew me to doing it as an audio series was this idea of like, well, maybe you could mind the fact that you don't see something for tension.
Sure.
Like if you have two characters and they're looking out the window and they're like, oh my God, what's that? And you can't see, like you're listening. You're just waiting for someone to tell you what they're seeing. And so part of that was, going in early, I was like, well, maybe you could have fun with that.
Right.
You could build sort of tension with that. And I think as I was doing it, I just realized like, wow, you really, Like this is a constant thing. It's not like sometimes you can't see.
Sure.
It's like you never can see what's going on. And so you constantly have to like, I feel like my dialogue chops got much more finely honed after 2 seasons of Impact Winter than after all the previous work on TV and film.
Oh, that's incredible. That's such a cool insight. Now, can you talk to me about the collaboration process and working with Skybound?
Oh yes, they've been extraordinary. They've been very, very good partners, and I think they're a very sort of creator-friendly company.
Right.
Obviously with Robert Kirkman.
Kirkman.
Yeah. And they've really just been incredible enablers, and the execs there, Rick, has talked to me, and he's just said, the important thing here is that you're having fun.
Right.
He says, because like when you're having fun, it shows, and the work is good and it's engaging. And, I'm not used to execs talking to me as a writer like that. So that's been very rewarding and very fun to have this cool sanctuary where you're kind of enabled to be your best creative self.
It's amazing. Now, off subject, just the last question I have for you, off subject a little bit. Now, we're here at San Diego Comic-Con 2023, and look, it's fair to say that this convention has been affected by the SAG strike and the writer strike, and we at Screen Rant stand with the SAG and the WGA. Can you share your thoughts on SAG and WGA strikes, and how you like to see the industry change?
It has to change, honestly. Like it's an existential thing. And not only for the sake of continued employment of writers and actors as a field that you can make a living in, but also just I think for the creative authenticity of the work itself. I think AI is massively important.
I agree.
Because it's like, and I remember there was a time, when I was telling myself, oh well, it's never going to be able to tell a story, And messing with ChatGPT now, it's not great, but it's great in the eyes of some execs. Like it's serviceable. Like an exec could type in like, "Give me an Ant-Man movie," and like be like, "Oh, that's good enough," which is terrifying because it's like
scary.
Because I feel like audiences and fans, it would make all the difference in the world to them. Like who have such a finely tuned sense of like, "Oh, that works and that's great," or "Oh, that's crap." So I do think it's not only for like the employment of the writers, but it's for the art itself. And I think it's an incredibly important moment.
Absolutely.
And I think both guilds have never been more determined. I remember the previous strike. It didn't even feel like this. This feels like everyone's in it for the long haul.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Look, Travis, thank you so much for joining us here at Screen Rant today. Amazing show, Impact Winter. Audible, you can get it on Audible. Season 2 is available.
Thank you.
And if you want to catch up, check out Season 1. If you're going on any long car rides, any flights, this is the perfect thing to check out. Travis, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
No, thank you for having me. Thanks.